Hey, what's up YouTube? Today I'm going to teach you how to set up and play Escape the Dark Sector by Themeborne Games. This game just came in from a Kickstarter. Really excited to have it. I'm very happy to finally get it in-house. So the setup for this game is fairly straightforward. The rulebook does a good job of showing you exactly how to set it up. What you're going to do is you're going to separate your cards and your dice, and you're going to have your character dice, which are the larger white dice. You'll set those off to the side for when you set up your characters. You'll set aside your larger black dice or your chapter dice like this. Set aside your smaller black dice or hit dice, and then you have your ammo dice, which are all the smaller white dice. Separate those by symbols. You have energy, which is a lightning bolt, ballistic, which is a bullet, and explosive, which just looks like a little kaboom. So set those aside like that. You have smaller cards. You have a black deck of cards, which is your item cards. Shuffle those up and set them aside. You have your mission failed and accomplished. Those are epilogue cards, so you only read those when the game is over. Then you have two other sets of cards. You have cybernetic implants, which are these, which have the close combat, non-combat, and range combat symbols on them. And then you have starting weapon cards, which show the crits for the three different types of ballistic damage. So I'll set those aside for right now. For the larger card, you're going to have your crew member cards, which the backs will look like this, accessing personnel file, and they'll have the crew members on the front. And you're going to have the larger chapter cards. These will be separated into boss cards, which look like a door on one side, start cards, which look like the cover of the game, where it says turn over to begin, and then Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 cards, which looks like the motion tracker from the movie Aliens. It's pretty cool looking. I like that. That's good. That's a really neat touch. So you have the 1, 2, and 3 on the blips and the cards. What you're going to do is you're going to shuffle all those up. You're going to choose one boss at random, put it face down, shuffle up all the Act cards in their respective piles, deal 4 Act 3 cards, put them down, 4 Act 2 cards, 4 Act 1 cards, and then 1 start card. Leave those there. That is going to be your chapter deck. You have two more small cards, which is the tactical combat action cards. One of them says flank. The other one says activate medical drone. You're going to leave those face up next to where the chapter cards are going to turn over to. Everyone's going to pick a character. When you pick a character, you're going to pick also the character's character die. They have their names on them. So you can see this is Lieutenant Taylor. And each character is going to have different attributes. So if you can see here, Taylor has a lot of cunning, not a fair amount of wisdom, not so much might. Whereas Lieutenant Smith has a lot of might, a fair amount of wisdom, and not so much cunning. So I chose these two characters. For a solo play, you pick two characters and you play as both those characters. For any other player count from 2 to 4, you just choose that many players. And then every player is going to start with a cybernetic enhancement or a cybernetic implant. So let's see, I'll pick advanced targeting and combat protocol. And what these are is these are special abilities that you can use throughout the game. So for advanced targeting for Lieutenant Taylor, it's once per round of ranged combat, you may re-roll one of your ammo dice, applying only the second result. And for Lieutenant Smith, it's once per round of close combat, you may re-roll your crew die, which is the large one, and choose which result to apply. So that's really useful, and I'll explain why that is later. So those are your special abilities. You have your player reference cards here. One of them has close combat actions on one side and range combat actions on the other. The other one has a little short rules to remember list and what all the symbols mean on the other side. So that's very useful. So now you're ready to play. So what you're going to do is you're going to turn over your chapter card. Now, whoever turns over a card is important. It's important to know who's turning the cards. You don't have to take turns per se. It's not like I'll take my turn and the person to my left turns over one and then the person across from me turns over one. It's not that kind of game. You get to choose who gets to turn over the card. Whoever it does is referred to as you on the chapter cards. So some cards, so this, well, for example, this first card we turn over, at the end of it, it's going to tell us to draw a starting weapon. So these are the starting weapons. Whenever you turn over an item to collect, you turn them over in the middle of the table, and then everybody talks about what items are going to go to who wants what items. Now weapon cards, especially ranged weapon cards, all guns come loaded. So I'll hold this up to the camera a little better. So if you see here, you have this card. Name of the card up here, slug pistol. It's a ranged weapon. It comes with one ballistic die of ammo. Fire rate, which means it fires one shot at a time. The crit on it does 2 bullets worth of damage. And the negative crit, your weapon jams. And I'll explain what that means. So this comes with 1 ammo, so I'm going to take 1 ballistic ammo, put it on there. The ray gun comes with 1 energy ammo, and I'm going to place that on there. And for this one, same fire rate, same ammo, but the crit is different. So on this die, you can either miss, or the crit on this one does 1 energy damage, but it also does 1 damage to you. So you don't want that to happen. So now we're all ready. Now as you're turning cards, let's say we have this card here. So this says you lose 1 hit point and must immediately begin close combat alone for 1 round. So what that means is it's important for whoever it is to be the one who is referred to as you. Now, speaking of hit points, one thing that I did neglect to mention was that the last part of your setup is your medical record. So your medical record is how you track your hit points. So if you look, it looks kind of like graph paper. So you start out with 12. Everybody starts out with 12, no matter what your player count. And then as you lose hit points, the next set of boxes over, you just color in. If you can see, I colored in the 12 here. So the next box over would be the 10. So you just color in that and then just draw a line from one to the other, and it'll end up looking sort of like a line graph. You can put your name up top. So now let's say we go back to that example. So you lose 1 hit point, you would mark that on here, draw the line, and then keep going. So each round will have either a combat or a check, or it'll just have a choice that you have to make. So for example, this one here is every crew member must make a check. The check is usually rolling a specific symbol in a certain amount of rolls. So for this one, speed check, you roll cunning in 1 attempt. Well, that would be good for Lieutenant Taylor because Lieutenant Taylor has a lot of cunning on her die. But for Lieutenant Smith, not so good. But it also says a patience check, roll 2 wisdom in 3 attempts. Now on your character die, you'll have regular symbols, which count as 1, and then you'll have doubles, which do count as 2, even during checks. The shield around it I'll explain when we get into combat. So speaking of combat, let's get into that. So we have, let's say, this card here. So this is a sentry gun, and at the bottom here you see the black dice. These are the chapter dice. This will be the enemy's health. So for this one, it's 2 might, 1 wisdom, and then there's a people symbol. So that refers to your player count. Now, for a solo game, player count counts as 2. It's important to note. So what this means is I'm going to take 2 might, I'm going to take one wisdom, and then I'm going to take 2 chapter dice because that's my player count. I have 2 players, and I'm going to roll them. I'm going to take the results and place them here. This is this enemy's health. Now, cards will say at the bottom of them, begin combat, or they'll say begin ranged combat or begin close combat. Now, the way this works, ranged combat is how you can start, where you can use your weapons to shoot from a distance. Close combat is up close and personal. It's hand-to-hand melee combat. You can go from ranged to melee or ranged to close combat, but you cannot go the other way. You can't start out as close combat and go to ranged. So if it says start range combat, you have to start ranged. If it says start close combat, you have to start close. If it says just begin combat, you can start whichever you choose. So for this case, this says begin combat. Now, 2 other parts of the card, well, 3 actually. There's the 2 symbols here. One is a number in crosshairs, one is a number in a squiggly hexagon. That is the damage this enemy does to you when they attack. So the one in the crosshairs is range damage. The one in the hexagon is close combat damage. The symbol at the bottom is how many item cards you get to choose from the item deck when you defeat this enemy. And then up here is how much damage this enemy takes from specific types of ammo. So ballistic damage does 1 for each ballistic symbol. Energy weapons do 2 damage, and explosive do 3. Sometimes you will run into cards such as this one here, which is the boss card, where it'll show 2 symbols equals 1. That means you need to roll at least 2 to do 1 damage. So if you roll 1, you don't get anything. So the way ranged combat works is everyone is going to choose what they're going to do before the actual combat occurs. So you have different choices of actions that you can choose, and everybody chooses one. You can shoot, which means that you're going to fire using one of your weapons at the enemy. You can flank, which means that you're going to place your crew die over here into the flanking position, and then the next round you'll get a free shot. But there's a risk with it. When you go into flank, you have to roll a hit die, and you might get hit by stray fire. Reload, which is reloading your weapons. Activate drone, which is this card, which lets a character heal 1 hit point of damage for that round, and then that's turned over and we can't use it again until the next chapter. Trade is when you can take a item from another player. The player you take the item from does get to do their own action, but your whole action will be taking that item. And then take cover is just kind of cowering in the corner, trying not to get shot. So shooting, you choose your ammo die, you roll it. Oh, sorry. You choose your ammo die and a hit die. You roll them, and you apply the results. Hit dice are because ranged combat, all the firing and all the damage is dealt at the same time. Everything is simultaneous. So when you roll this, this is the enemy shooting at you. So if they roll a crosshairs, they've hit you. If they roll a blank, then they've missed you. The crosshairs, if they hit you, you apply the amount of damage in the crosshairs on the bottom of the card to your medical record. And you also will apply whatever damage you dealt. So if I had rolled this just now, I hit for 2 damage, and that means I can pick any 2 of these chapter dice and remove them. So let's say I'll pick these 2, the 2 wisdom. So I take those out of there. Now he only has 3. Now while that is happening, let's say this character shot also. They would roll theirs. They got hit, but they would have hit also. So they would take off another chapter die. Now, once you've spent your ammo, your ammo is spent, you need to take a reload action to reload your weapon. So as far as this goes, you can attack with both hands full of weapons at the same time, which means that you can either shoot with two pistols, like dual wielding, or you'll get larger weapons that are like rifles, and those you'll hold sideways. So I'll show you what that means. So let's say we got this rocket launcher, this beefy rocket launcher. This card will be in landscape. That means it's for two inventory spaces or two hands. So you can hold up to 4 items at a time, but this counts as 2 items because it's in landscape. So let's say you had that here, that would be a cross like this, taking up those 2 spaces. Now, if we had another pistol, of course there's no other pistols in the deck, right? Well, let's say I had taken his pistol or had another player's single pistol. If I had 2 pistols, I could use both of those and fire at the same time. So let's say I was firing this round with this person. This person's firing, they're going to shoot at the bad guy. One person has to fire each round. You can't just have both people taking cover or taking other actions. If nobody fires for that round, then it begins close combat right away. So nobody takes any damage, but you automatically have to now switch over to close combat and take those actions, which I'll explain in a second. So let's say flanking. Let's explain flanking. So this person is going to lay down suppressing fire. This person is going to flank. To flank, you roll a hit die. If it hits, you take a 1 point of damage. This is also denoted on the ranged actions card here, where it says there, this little 1. So you would take 1 damage if you rolled the hit, and then you're in the flank. Now the benefit of the flank is that you get a free attack the next round, and that attack is a bonus. So what's going to happen is this, let's say this happened, I did my damage, took that off, I spent my ammo like I rolled before. Now the next round, Smith is going to attack from the flank. So when they attack from the flank, you have a choice, either ranged attack or a regular flank attack, or a melee attack. So let's say chooses a melee attack because they want to start close combat the next round, because this player only has their fists left over because they spent all their energy, their ammo for their ray gun. So they would do their attack, and whatever you roll to hit, you get an extra hit. So if you actually hit the enemy, you get to take off an extra point. So let's say, for argument's sake, he shot with a slug pistol. Roll a slug pistol, he hits. That's 1 point. You get an extra point because you're shooting from the flank and the enemy cannot shoot back. So we would take away 2 hits for that. So now the enemy only has 1 left. So that's how flanking works. You take that back. This gets flipped over after it's used once, and you can't use it again. They're not going to fall for it twice. You can also choose to use Activate Medical Drone, where you place your crew die here. You gain 1 health, and then after it's used, that flips over to Drone Recharging, and you can't use it again until the next chapter. Now let's say you decided to reload 1 round. Reloading, you choose that as your action. You fill up 1 weapon full of whatever ammo it uses. So in this case, this one full would be 1 ammo. You get 1 ammo. If one says it starts with 3 ammo dice, you refill it all the way for during the reload action. Now let's say close combat. If flanking has not been used yet, close combat, you flip the flank over. Flanking is not used in close combat at all. You can turn over your close combat action card. And now instead of shooting, you have fight. So fight uses your character die. So when you roll your character die, whatever symbol shows up, you take one of the corresponding dice off of your enemy. If you do this during a flank attack that you chose before, remember when we said you go into the flank, you can choose to either have a ranged attack or a melee attack. If you choose that during the melee attack, you take over whatever is on the die if you hit and another die of your choice. If you don't roll a symbol that is here, like I just rolled a fist, if you don't roll that during your attack, it doesn't count as a hit. Now, melee attacking works slightly differently than ranged attack. Notice that I didn't roll a hit die because melee attack is give and take. So I roll my die. If the enemy survived, then they automatically hit back for whatever the melee value is. If you roll a double, which has a shield around it, that means that you block. You don't take damage that turn from the enemy. When you're doing close combat, someone has to fight every turn. So you can't have both players taking cover or taking other actions. Other actions you can take is reload, activate drone, trade, and take cover. So that is the basics of combat. Now, after combat is done, once you take off the last die, the enemy is defeated. You pull as many item cards as there are here, and then choose who that goes to or who you want it to go to. And that is pretty much it for combat. Now, the 3 acts will look different throughout it. The first one is detention level, which is where you come out. The whole idea of the game is that you're all the crew of a starship. You're captured and imprisoned, and you break out of prison and you're trying to get out, and you have to get out of the space station. So that is the dark sector. So you start out in the detention level. Act 2 is the heart of the station, which is all like dive bars and laboratories and alien hives and things like that. And then you get to the forgotten zones, which is like smuggler hideaways and docking bays, and there's all sorts of weird aliens and stuff in there. So it does get harder as you go along. And then before you finish, you have to defeat a boss. If any one of your characters dies, the game is over and you lose. So everybody has to survive to the end. And the only way to win the game is to defeat the last card, the boss, with all of your characters surviving. Now, when I spoke before about close combat and the give and take, what this means is, let's say you're fighting the boss, you roll your close combat die and you hit him and take away his last bit of life. He will not hit you back. He does not retaliate. If the last shot that you have on him kills him, he doesn't hit back. So even if you're at 1 health, it doesn't matter. You defeated him. The game is over. A few other things to note are for swapping out cards. So you can trade items in between chapter cards. You can trade items when you're collecting items, and you can, in between rounds, you're also allowed 1 reload. So that's a key thing to know, is that in between chapters, you're allowed to take a reload action once. So if you spend all of your ammo, you can refill at least 1 weapon before you turn the next card. As far as inventory items, you can fit 4 spots, as I said. So say I had that there and that there. This would be 4. This would be full. Now, if you choose another card, let's say you choose a card that gives you hit points. So we have these unmarked pills. I'm not sure I would have taken them, but I'm not stuck on a space station. So this is discard to restore 1 hit point to your crew member. Even if you're full, you can take this action if you're going to use it right away. You can take this item, I mean. So even during combat, if this character has this and I'm full, I can use the trade action still and take this and then use it immediately and gain my hit point. Item cards can usually be used immediately unless they say otherwise or unless they're a weapon. And that is pretty much the game. You go through telling the story and see whether you survive or not. Now, as far as my thoughts on this, I I'm a huge sci-fi fan. So as a huge sci-fi fan, I absolutely love this game. The theme is fantastic. The artwork is great. The components are well made. I really like the storytelling aspect of it. It really feels immersive. It really feels like I'm in the game or in the setting. And it's great for introducing people to tabletop because it gives them the dice rolling mechanics and the decision making mechanics and the storytelling mechanic all in one very easy to digest package. Everything is made really well. It all fits the theme. I like how the cards themselves have like circuit board backings with the symbols etched into them as well. I like that it's not over the top, overly produced colorized artwork. It's very simple, black and white shading, line drawings, very much like much older D&D modules. I really, really enjoy this game. I will say I have concerns about the fact that it differs from its predecessor, Escape the Dark Castle, in one way where this game everyone starts at 12 health no matter what the player count is. But in that game, you started at different health depending on how many players are playing the game. Now, I haven't played this yet with 4 people, but I would assume that it would be a little bit easier to get through the game with 4 people as opposed to with just 2 people or 3 people, simply because you have more health. Yes, it is a downside that you can't have someone heal every round, such as using the medical drone. You can only use it once per round, and or once per chapter, I should say, and then that's it. You can't use it again. So that does make health a very, very hot commodity, but I'm not quite sure how it's going to play out. I will say that the few times I did play it with 2 players, I lost spectacularly. Um, there was some really bad dice rolls, but apart from that, everything else about this game I think is an absolute win. The dice feel nice and meaty, and they roll really well. I will say if you have one of those smaller dice trays that is just like a flat piece of leather that you snap together to form the sides, these big dice, chances are they're going to bounce right out of those suckers. They are really, really nice heavy dice, and but they don't do those so well. Mine has rigid sides, so it's not as big of a deal. Also, I can't really fit these in my dice tower just because they're bigger dice. So keep keep that in mind. So if you look at the size difference, there is a pretty decent size difference between the 2 dice. So, but apart from that, excellent game. If you're a sci-fi fan, you'll definitely love this game. If you're not a fan of sci-fi, you may enjoy it, the storytelling aspect of it, but I don't feel like it won't resonate as well with you. There's a lot of homages in this game to other games, other movies, especially movies, and it that part of it is really cool, such as the motion trackers from Aliens, and there's a card in here. Yeah, this is like straight out of Aliens with the eggs, and you got some punks here who the one on this side looks kind of like Bill Paxton from Near Dark, and as we know, Bill Paxton was also in Aliens. So very cool game, very cool artwork. I really, really like it. Check it out. Escape the Dark Sector from Themeborne Games. It's on their website at themeborne.org. So Themeborne. I'll show you the box here. I did an unboxing as well, so you'll get a better idea of what comes in it. Check them out. Thanks very much for watching. Like and subscribe. If you guys have any questions, please drop them down in the comments. I'll reply to whatever you guys throw in there. Other than that, keep gaming and have fun.